tip number one. And Ben, you had mentioned that when rolling over a 401k, the first tip that we need to consider is evaluating their options. So what does evaluating their options mean? What does that look like?
Just keep in mind that you actually don't have to do the rollover. So a lot of people may not realize that.
So of one of the steps there, it looks like we've got 4 choices. The first choice is stick with what you've got.
Absolutely. So you can keep some or all in the existing plan, in the existing 401k. So that is one option to consider. The other option is you can transfer it to your next 401k if you have one at a new employer. The third choice is a very common choice, is actually rolling it over into an IRA that somebody like myself at Edward Jones or a financial advisor would help manage it with you, or would help just manage it as a fiduciary. I want to stress that it's hardly ever a good idea to cash it out, mainly because of the taxes and potential penalties that could come with it. And so that is an option. You may need a portion, but I would stress that if you have some income needs, speak with somebody before you would ever cash any 401k out.
So tip number 2 is minimize taxes. How do we do that when rolling over a 401k?
We're really starting to focus more on the rollover. So
Okay.
This would be the third option. And when you consider doing a rollover, you want the money to go in the proper account if you do the rollover so that you don't have any tax penalties. And what that means to you is any pre-tax or normal contributions in your 401k, you roll to what is called a traditional IRA. And if there's any Roth contributions, you make sure it goes to a Roth IRA. So the long and short of it is you just want to make sure that you don't incur any additional taxes.
Our next tip, which is really thinking twice before doing an indirect rollover. And you're going to have to sort of break that down for our listeners as to what a direct rollover is versus an indirect rollover, because you're really educating me. Let's educate our listeners.
So when you think of an indirect rollover, what I mean by that is, and it's kind of confusing, because an indirect rollover is when the 401k provider issues you a check in your name. And so
instead of going directly to the new IRA plan provider, which might be Edward Jones or might not, right?
And so why that's important to you is that if you do an indirect rollover, you're going to have to potentially withhold taxes, whereas a direct rollover, all the money goes into the new plan without any tax consequences or any withholdings that could be mandatory.